topic obviously today is how to boost employer branding strategy. We were doing a small recap on how this went, and how happy we were to present this topic, because obviously it's something that is much needed in the HR field. And we value so much the importance of having a strategy that goes from A to Z and not specifically to one topic, specifically recruitment or onboarding. It's really important to have a high level strategy to make sure that all your HR is well aligned and across all your organization.
Definitely. So I think one of the things that we'll be sharing with you is really our learnings and findings by speaking to a number of our clients, or a number of our prospects, about people from the industries, really the pain points that they're actually facing, and some of the best practices they've been adopting. So all these insights we were able to gather, and as a result, we'll be sharing this with you in the hope that it will help you boost your employer branding strategy.
And something that we mentioned as well is that you will see that not only we will give you the definition, but we will also give you the tools to be able to from the hour after the webinar on how to concretely build your employer branding and go further with the strategy. We don't want to stay too high level. We really want to dig deeper, give you example, and be as concrete as possible.
Definitely.
So maybe an introduction of ourselves that would help. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Nicholas. I'm actually one of the co-founder and managing partner at Skilled. Glad to be presenting today. A bit more about yourself, Francis.
Yes,
that would be great.
Yes. Well, I'm the senior account executive here within Skilled. So what I do is that I help HR organizations digitalize and automate their recruitment processes. So doing that, I get to speak to a number of senior executives, really to learn what are their pain points and how can they innovate, how can they make sure that they're going to keep up with the fast market change that we see today. So that's me.
Great. Maybe a bit about the agenda for today. What we will be sharing is obviously what is employer branding. And we have a full process to really dig deeper into the topic. So what is employer branding? Why we are doing employer branding? It's also for us to tell you and explain on how to do it, and concretely how can you implement this straight away in your organization. Obviously this is something that takes a bit of time, but it's definitely worthwhile taking the right time for this, when we will be when it's important to do it, and who is actually involved in the process of employer branding. So maybe you can start with a small introduction.
Of course, happy to do so. Well, basically, one of the things I was thinking of, wondering about how should I start this webinar with, or at least the presentation with, and not surprisingly, I think the best way that came up for me was to actually put us in a situation where we get to ask ourselves certain questions when we are dealing with employer branding. And some of the questions I guess I found worth asking ourselves are questions such as, hey, does my career site promote my company's value? So in your case, does your career site promote your company's value? Not only that, but do your job posting really reflect and sell your organization? Does it go beyond just like, okay, the tasks and duties, but does it really reflect your organization? Other questions worth asking, ourselves are, how can you make sure your employer brand connects with but also promotes the right message to the right people? Okay, this is a very difficult task for many organizations. It is a great challenge, but the last thing that I thought worth asking ourselves is what perceptions do people have on your brand, and are you successful in attracting the right talent? So these are all questions that I'd like us to start really thinking about, let it sinking in as an introduction to this webinar.
Great. And it's a good questions to reflect on, because with all that we will share with you today, it will allow you to put what you have done into perspective and see whether there's room for improvements, and really challenge the current ways of doing things. This is really so important, but obviously this is not as good if you don't put in place the right employer branding, and this is what we will be sharing also today.
But yeah, not only that, also Nico, but it's also the mindset. Very often, what we see is that we tend to put things in place that resonate with ourselves, and without really and deeply taking into consideration the market requirements, the market changes, what candidates really want, etc. So these are all things that we hope to be sharing with you today. Yeah.
Perfect. I mean, to start off, maybe it's good to say, what is it? What is employer branding?
Yes, good. What is employer branding? Very good question, and very simple. I guess we all know what employer branding is. But just to kind of reflect, employer branding is actually a process that involves, promotes, both within and outside a firm, a clear view of what makes a firm different and desirable as an employer. It's also actually something like the thing that differentiates you from your competitor. Okay. One of the things to help you understand, even beyond this, that you could take into consideration is like, okay, think what the job seekers have in mind. And to give you some example, what job seekers have in mind when dealing with when searching for jobs, or when dealing with being faced with employer branding, what they like to see are, what is your organizational structure, culture, and if I come to your website, I want to get a first feeling of what is it like to be part of your culture. I want to feel connected with your brand name, but also the conversation around it.
Great.
Most common concepts, there are a number of concepts and terms around employer branding, but I was able to find three of the most common ones when dealing with employer branding. The first one is employer brand, something that's very often misinterpreted by people. The second one is employer of choice. Sounds very sexy, but it's also very difficult to measure. However, the very most, at least the preferred choice of a term or even concept around employer branding so far is employer reputation. And this seems to be the most favorable one for many.
Great, okay.
There are a few elements that impact your organization's reputation as an employer. And to give you some example, your organization history but also the emotional bonds that you manage to generate with your audience, with your public, with your target group, but also things that really impact or influence your employer brand is internally, who owns it? What are the people involved within that process? And how is it led, but also managed within the employer? Is it owned by only one specific department, or are there other departments involved? But also, what does your employer brand really do? What is its purpose? And other things also, the level of success that your employer branding has, that's going to either generate your creativity to even go beyond what you've already achieved, or very much demotivate you, and if not you, then definitely your employee, and as a consequence, you will lose out on future employees. But it also does impact the share price and position that you have in the market. So if we look at some of the elements that really have an impact on your brand, as I said earlier, you've got your organizational structure that's really can be impacted. But there are other elements that make your employer sexy or not sexy. It's the location where you're located, something very worth considering. Not always easy to choose, but it does impact your employer brand. the reputation in the media. So not just online, like on your website, like how you projecting yourself. You might have the most sexy projection on your website, but how's the media talking about you?
Yeah.
So that's also very, very important. And media, it's something. I mean, you don't need to be doing big things for media to talk about you, but candidates can talk about you, and as a result, the media will pick it up. So it's something definitely worth considering. But also your customers. How are you being perceived by your customers? What do your customers say about you? And what are their experience with you? These are all very, very important elements that does have an impact on your employer branding. And if you go further beyond that, you see that diversity of people within your organization has a very big impact, definitely nowadays. And I don't need to remind anyone that diversity inclusion is a very important topic these days. And you see that more and more candidates actually are paying attention to that when or before applying within an organization.
And that was one of the most trending topic in 2018. Hopefully, it's going to be also in 2019. It's critical.
Yeah.
It's obviously boosting productivity across teams. It's a great advantage for companies to have such big diversity.
Definitely. If you go beyond that, is that I remember, because I've worked as a recruiter myself as well, and I'll be interviewing hiring managers and doing job qualifications, and then very often I was faced to deal with hiring managers. Not very, very motivating or very inspiring when talking about their jobs, about the type of jobs that they're making available, because they found it like not sexy at all and or not even inspiring. So by that, I want to say is that the type of jobs that you make available, people do pay attention to it, and that's going to have an impact on your employer branding as well, and that's going to have also an impact internally on the shortage of skills within your company. The physical environments, systems, and equipment have all little things. Do you have are you an Apple user, like a Mac user, or not? Do you have iPhones or not? These are all things that do have an impact on your employer branding. Some people just want to work with iPhones, just want to have iPhones or have Apple. Some others don't matter, they don't care. But these are all elements that you do need to consider and see if they really have an impact on your employer branding or not. Your HR policies are very important, obviously. And not only that, but also your innovations, your vision around innovation and the way you innovate has a big impact on your employer branding. As last, the quality and effectiveness of your communications, and not just internally, but also externally. Or if you prefer the other way around, you can be very well communicating externally, but internally you're not communicating well. So the effectiveness and quality of it is very, very important when it comes to impacting your employer branding.
All right. So, to summarize, maybe so you're...
To summarize, employer branding is just basically how an organization markets what it has to offer to both potential and existing employees. And that was said by Walker in 2007. I think it's very often said also that you should be treating your potential employees just as well as good as you're treating your customers. So this is my summary when it comes to what is employer branding.
Okay, just before going any further, I mean, we would like to mention that if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to ask in the Q&A section. At the end, we will be able to pick up questions if we're not too long, but we will not be too long. We will be able to pick up questions and answer what questions you might have.
Definitely.
All right.
All right. Let's move on.
Perfect. So.
Now let's look at why do we need employer branding? Why is it needed actually? In my line of work, I've got to deal with many various companies from all sizes, and I've been part of different organizations as well from different sizes. And too often, unfortunately, you see that employer branding is always or has always been the very last bit of the process. Or like you find an organization, an existing organization for several years, and then suddenly only in the very last period of the time starting to work on the employer branding. So that says something about the view that a company has, or even the consideration the company has around employer branding. Employer branding is very important, and every organization wants to attract the best talents and also be seen as an employer of choice. This is, I don't need to say that to anyone. I don't need to remind anyone of this fact. But the importance of it is often companies often fail to see it.
Yeah.
However, with that said, employer branding is very important because it will help your HR organization, or actually it will help your entire organization to attract and retain the right talent. And you do this by having a well-defined and thoroughly thought employer brand. And it is also very important for the people, working within the organization. Because your people are your most valuable assets as a business. So you want to make sure that, okay, they're receiving the best communication ever. They're receiving the best, the clearest vision ever that you can present to them. And you want to make sure that, okay, you value them just as much or perhaps even more than you value your customers, because you know that, okay, because of them, you'll be able to build upon the success of your company. So you want to make sure that you're really investing in your people by establishing a very strong employer branding that is clear internally but also externally. And something worth mentioning, 69% of job seekers says that they will apply to a job that has a good employer branding. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is 69%, which is
like quite a high number.
It is a quite high number. And unfortunately, if you look around, you don't still have enough, job career websites that really reflect the true meaning of an employer branding. And too often, companies think that they have a very strong career website, but yeah, the fact is different.
Yeah, it might be good to have like sometimes some external stakeholders to look at it and give you an honest opinion. It's really critical because I mean, from what we see on a regular basis, that companies are spending a huge amount of money in trying to attract candidates. Then the problem is the candidate might be interested by the company, but the time they land on the website and on the career page, he might actually think twice about applying, and this is becoming a big problem because then you might have a great talent that are churning and going away to other organizations that have something better to offer them. And you might be the greatest organization, but the problem is if you don't show it, well, basically you lost it all. And this is the big problem, because this is merely one of the big problem in and now talking about recruitment. In recruitment is that often sometimes companies are talking about the fact that they are not having enough candidates, but what they don't see is like a marketing cycle. If a candidate is coming and is going away just because you don't have enough a strong enough employer branding, this is a big problem.
I mean, it's funny that you mentioned that. I remember when I've been working as a recruitment consultant for a recruiting agency, and I know like some of my biggest pay by just placing one person within a well-respected firm was about 32,000 euros, just like one placement. And the company was investing a tremendous amount of money in recruitments. But funny enough, not in their employer branding, because that would help them save so much money,
of course,
and attract much more, people. So what companies are doing, or unfortunately, they are not putting enough effort, or at least there is room where enough, more effort can be put around, the creation of a very strong employer branding. Yeah,
great,
definitely.
So.
And other things that we see is that 75% of candidates, research about an employer reputation before even applying. They want to make sure that, okay, hey, I'm going to be part of a sexy brand. And then, yeah, the definition of a sexy brand varies from one person to another. But what you do get to see more and more around that definition, that a candidate seems to be interested in brand that has an impact one way or another, and that also, succeed in communicating the impact of their work, the impact of their existence as an employer. And further to that, you see that 83% of employers do agree that employer brand plays a significant role in their ability to hire talent.
Of course.
So that pretty much backs up what I've said earlier, or what you said earlier. Like, if you don't invest enough, you will not have the ability to hire the best talent out there.
Of course.
So, and as last we see that 69% of candidates would not accept a job in a firm, Anika, with a bad reputation, even if they wouldn't have a job. And I can testify to that personally. I did not accept the job because, I did not feel that the company had a good reputation yeah. So these are all very important figures that we need to consider. And
seeing such high numbers, it's really, and this is also, we are here to advise, but it's if you feel that you don't have a strong enough employer brand, it's really time to focus on it, and really time to invest onto your employer brand, because you see that it will have a direct impact. And here we're not just here to show you, the bad news. We're here also to help you, and tackle this problem.
There's no bad news, to be honest. There's no bad news.
But if you're not doing it,
yeah.
You might wonder, it's really time to crack on, right?
Yeah, definitely. These are all opportunities.
Of course.
These are all opportunities and room for improvements. And this is technology and innovation. And just like you're saying, we're here to really share, our insight and advices with you. So, yeah. Other important aspects of employer branding that you definitely need to, reflect on is, attract future talents. And by that, I know I've said this already before, but I just want to re-emphasize on it. Your employer branding is really out there to attract future talents, not just to attract the talent you're looking for today, to respond to your immediate needs. So basically, the current open vacancies that you might have. But it's supposed to be there to attract the talent that's gonna, help you further your company's vision and mission. So you need to be able to reflect on your goals, throughout your employer branding. And as I've said, and it's going to help you save time, so you won't have to pay people, like recruiting agencies, like a fee of 32,000 euros, like I've been paid once, or at least my previous boss was paid. But it will help you save time, but also money. And needless to mention that you'll be noticed. You'll stand out of the crowds. And by having a very strong employer branding. And something that you will definitely also see as a result is that you will have a better retention around your organization. So a good employer brand really needs to reflect the personality of an organization. Do you want to be successful?
Of course, and direct impacts can be measured from that as well. I will share a bit more about this, but it's when you start investing in employer branding and you get the right message across, you can really see the return on investment quite fast, and that's what's amazing with this. And as you said, obviously, impact not only on number of hires, you can the number of applicants, you can increase the onboarding process, how you can reduce cost. This is all the type of thing that needs to be discussed with CEOs, C-level, to really defend the case on whether and how important it is to invest in employer branding, because results will follow at the end.
Yeah, definitely. I think what I'm going to share with you now is the purpose of the employer brand. What these are, and I think we all know that. But so there's a few things that we don't realize about our employer brand, or at least where it starts and where it ends. And this is something that we hope that you'll take note of throughout this webinar.
They will be able to watch it again.
Okay, good. But a very important purpose of the employer branding is really there to help you differentiate your business, and in an attractive manner, from those business competing with the same talents. We all know or are aware of the war for talents. And personally, I'm from the Netherlands. At least I've been living there for half of my life, pretty much. And what we see, some of the recent researchers I was going through, is that okay, the war for talent is expecting to be even worse than before, just like to increase. But funny enough, that study said, although the war for talent is increasing, it doesn't mean that the talents aren't there.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, for some very specific type of roles, there are just like less talent or not that many talents yet. However, still for many other positions, there are plenty of talents. But the problem is that everybody is presenting themselves in the same way. So it's not being very attractive. It's not being very creative in the way they are approaching talent. That's one. And another thing is also that companies are not being creative in where to find those talents. Where do we find the pool of talents, and how are we going to find those new pool or those other pool of talents, because those people are out there. So this was a conclusion of a study recently made in the Netherlands. So again, you need to understand that you can differentiate yourself throughout your employer branding, or at least by means of your employer branding. But it's also there to communicate what you need for the talents. All right, we often fail to really communicate clearly why a talent should be joining a firm. We think that okay, this is what the talent is going to do. Let's just put out the job description out there, make it as clear as possible, and then it's going to be exciting because I don't know, user experience professional just want to do the user experience type of roles. Well, no, it goes a little bit beyond that, because don't forget, you might be looking for user experience, but there are also tons of other companies looking for the exact same profile. So what the user experience wants to be able to do is like resonate with a brand that actually really reflects, his ambitions, his desires, his dreams, etc. Because don't forget, right, today we're trying to really create a balance and a link between, our professional and private life. So, communicate what's in there for the talents.
Great. So I think, moving to the topic on how to implement an employee value proposition, this is quite important, because obviously now we have talked about the what, the why, but you will see we need to talk about, how to implement it at its core, because then it gives our audience practical ways of jumping into building their own EVP.
And definitely, I think you're gonna tell us a bit more about that, Nicolas.
Hopefully, but the great news, it's actually not an impossible job. It's actually something that is will require some time, but obviously there's a good process in doing that. It's a circular process, so it's a never finish. Exactly. It's not something that you can do once and then coming back 10 years after. That doesn't work anymore. No. You have to keep on circling around, and every year or two review your EVP. Employee value proposition. So obviously, what you have to start first, bottom line, it's going through an analysis. What are you gonna find throughout building this EVP. The second thing is obviously, after analyzing, is designing it and finding the right EVP for your company. Obviously, I will dig deeper in each subject individually. Obviously, when you have designed, and you will have to test it, and this goes through effective communication throughout your organization, internally, externally, with a task group of people that will communicate it to a larger extent to the companies, and then testing it to the recruitment or onboarding, to see whether the message gets across and is having an impact. And obviously, this has to be integrated throughout your organization. So it's not about just communicating once and then forgetting about it after 2 years. It's really walking the talk. I mean, you get an EVP, you stick to it, and that people should get into should be on top of their mind every day they go to work in this organization. And that's why they should feel this is a great organization. This is the place I want to work, and I want to keep on working. And they should think about that on a constant basis.
Yeah.
And obviously, as this is not only an HR role, but have to measure how effective this is working. Is your senior people transferring the EVP correctly? Is your CEO aligned with this? Is your HR team aligned with this? And measuring also if the people and the stakeholders within the organization get it, and it's going through surveys, communication with your talent. So, I mean, digging a bit about the topic of the analysis is, how to implement an effective EVP is to first identify which employees enjoy working with your organization most and why. That might be an easy question, but if you dig deeper, you might have very happy people, but ask yourself, do you really know why? This is so important because it is what makes your organization attractive, and allows you to retain talent. So first, and that's probably the most important, is what are your employees expecting and value in your employment relationship? I mean, this is key, right? What are the key reasons you want to build this EVP? What is your target audience? I mean, who are you going to talk to be able to analyze where and what you have to do? And this goes through simple questions. Later in the slides, I will be sharing a worksheet where you will be able to, see some questions, with notes next to it, and you will be having concrete examples on how you can really get the feedback out of the candidate. Why are people joining your organization? Why are people liking working at your organization? If you think about it, this is really something that is important, because if you have, for example, high turnover, high absenteeism, it's really clear that there might be some problem at some level, and that your employee value proposition or proposal is not up to the level, and that's something that is really critical. What are employees looking for in their employment experience? What they enjoy most. This is really something that is critical in the analysis phase. And it goes even far beyond, because if you want to be as practical as possible, it's not only why people are happy, but why are people leaving as well. You have to, people are coming in, people are coming out, and there's reasons for one and reasons for the other, and this is something that you have to be honest about yourself, and ask the people leaving, why have you left this company? Is it there might be multiple reasons for it, but at the end you need to know it, otherwise you cannot you cannot find solutions to the problem.
So basically, there's a greater thing than just having an employer branding. So you really need like an employer value proposition, and really to, set it out and map it out, and implement it internally.
Yes, indeed. So basically, with all this information, and this is critical, you have to basically gather up a group of employees, to drive the process and drive the changes throughout your organization. I mean, this is really something that is not only an HR initiative. Yeah. It's really going far beyond. I think it should be involving multiple departments across multiple different level of seniority. In order for you to have the largest possible scope on this analysis. This is something that is really critical.
Yeah. So what you also often see is that many companies will just hire like a copywriter, to create like some very sexy content, so just so they can be a bit more appealing to the outside world. But I guess what you're talking about goes even beyond that. Than just having like very sexy copy, or having the ability to come up with good text
And
journaling.
Of course, it's always good to have external consultants, but the people within your organization might be and are the best people to take care of this. If you come up with an initiative of building a new EVP, you will be able to bring with you extremely large enthusiasm around people that will be involved in the project, and that will make your EVP even more effective and authentic. And this is really something that is core, because if you call an external consultant that will tell you, hey, this is your EVP, people that might not feel too connected to this because they haven't been involved and they haven't shared the project across the organization. So it shouldn't be coming from the top to bottom. It should come from all the level of the organization.
So do you think like many organizations have, or most of organizations have an EVP in place, like employer value proposition?
Actually, I don't think so. I think most of the organization, they have employee value proposition, but I think it's not clearly written, and not everyone is fully aligned with this. And this is a problem because it creates confusion. And I will talk to this into the communication part. But not only you should have this EVP in place somewhere, but it's not something that should be on top of the HR table. I mean, it should be communicated. It should be shared throughout the organization. You should have content, written content about this, to make it as effective as possible. Then before even delivering, I mean, in the design process of creating your EVP, you should even test. I mean, it's like a startup. Why so many startups are successful is they are not a risky organization. What they do, and very effectively, they test small scale things. So they test one thing, and then when it works, they move on to something else. And it should be the same with the EVP. Test it, see how they react, get the feedback, and then move on. And then you will get the full scope EVP, and then this is the one that you will be able to communicate.
Yeah, very good.
So obviously, in terms of the communication, as I said, this should be something that is extensively shared internally to make sure that you make it as effective as possible. It's really something, and that must be feeling quite frustrating if you build your EVP and then at the end, it's something that lies on your desk and no one knows about it. It's something that you should be aligned with the C-level, telling them that this is the core, and this is actually going to bring extremely good return on investment, because obviously it's going to take time, it might take resources, but at the end, the return on investment, it's a lot stronger. So it should, and as I mentioned, should be verbal communication, but it's also should be written communication, to make sure that people are not losing out on what has been shared.
And you mentioned about the onboarding. I think, and then if I try to link that with the communication part, do you think this is something that happens effectively and successfully? Well, when new employees are being onboarded? And
I think I will share a couple of examples. Example like NBC or Nike. You really see that they are going extremely far in the way they have built their EVP and the way they apply it. Talk to someone working at Nike or NBC. Those guys are living for their organizations. They are true passionate, and those. This is two examples. People could actually go really the extra mile because the companies are treating them so well, and this actually goes through clear understanding of the employer value proposition. Yeah. Why are people working for Nike or NBC? And they know it. Even with let's say 50,000 plus employees, people are extremely well aligned. But obviously, not everyone is up to the standard, and that's why those organizations are able to attract the best talent. It's not because they are finding untapped talent. It's because they are able to attract those talent, because they make it so appealing for those candidates to go there that actually they are going, and for example, NBC, they had a case where, implementing this EVP, and, months after, they have managed to attract more than 1 million candidates. This is crazy. Wow. For the recruitment team. Wow. And it's not something that, they haven't pushed on more job boards. Yeah. They haven't pushed. Obviously, they have done a well-structured communication on social media and everything, but they are, being effective in transferring and transmitting this EVP.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess like really being able to communicate your EVP even throughout the onboarding process is very important, because you just by doing so you actually creating ambassadors, and you're also transferring your company's mission and vision, which too often, unfortunately, is not something that many companies do or present throughout the onboarding process, and really make sure that, okay, hey, the new hires are well acquainted with the company's values and missions, not just about the job, what they need to do and what they need to achieve, and how they need to do the job, but really about, okay, what the company is and why the company exists and what the company wants to achieve as an organization or as a business.
And I would like maybe to share an example, because I think it makes it very clear. If you're extremely effective at communicating your EVP on social media, and then you're extremely effective at hiring that person, proposing them the best recruitment process, and then having a very well structured interview process where you're able to transfer that EVP, and then you have an onboarding process where you have nothing, like literally nothing happens. How is the candidate going to feel? And if everything, from social media to the onboarding, exactly, and if all of this is not aligned, basically, the candidate, will lose out, and this is the main problem. That's why, the organizations that are the most successful, from A to Z, they're able to deliver on that EVP, and this is, going from being aligned with the C-level, being aligned with the marketing team, making sure that you are getting this message across, and this is why communicating is so important. Otherwise, it might destroy all your good work, right?
Yeah.
If you create something great and then no one knows about it, then you have a problem. So
very clear.
I hope so. Now, obviously, if you have any additional questions, we will be able to answer them. We have more minutes to discuss a bit more. The second last step, it's the integration part. This is something that I've mentioned. It's not something that you only discuss and then forget about it. It's a psychological contract with your employees and with your management team. You have to live and breathe. This is really something that is so important. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense. And this is really not just the responsibility of the HR. Often we deliver. The HR people are delivering on project, and then at the end, they feel that they're all alone in this. It should be all line across the organization. And this is something that even the senior leaders should be able to answer from. Are you enough sharing this with your employees? Are you walking the talk? And obviously, what makes it easier to make sure that everyone does that is having supporting materials. If you do so, then people will not forget about it. They will see it. Do share emails regarding your EVP. Do stick it on the walls. It should be everywhere, because it's really at the core of your strategy and what you will be doing.
Definitely, I think one of the learnings was that the most successful companies are those who have their EVPs spread throughout each and every department, and like physically, basically, where as a reference point, where people can just go and start going through it, and that each and every department is very much aware of it. From starting with the reception.
Of course, indeed. And if you think about how to integrate this, obviously you can do references about your EVP in recruitment, and then obviously every time you have coaching or performance review, this has to be mentioned as well. And you have to ensure feedback. What do people think about this? How they feel about this EVP? Is it aligned? And from this, at the end, people will get it, and they will walk the talk and do it. And really adopt this EVP. And then what impact it will have? It's obviously longer retention. People that are extremely enthusiastic to come to the office, and more engaged employees. And obviously, if you have more engaged employees, what you have extremely a lot more productivity, which is definitely something that you want. So obviously, and one of the last point regarding how to implement your EVP is to measure. I think if you build it and do not measure how it works, then this is not going to work. You have to be honest about yourself. you feel that you have delivered the promise. This is really something that that is critical. And what you can do is, and this is something that is quite simple, is measuring satisfaction throughout surveys. Do people and how you have to get the the people's feedback and the employees' feedback. Otherwise, you will never know whether they adopt it or not. And what you will see is when you measure successful results, you will have an increase in satisfaction, a decrease in time to hire. You will be able to hire and create more talent pipeline. You will have a decrease in absenteeism, and then a decrease in turnover. And all of this combined is something that probably will bring back your investments in hundreds of thousands of euros per year in productivity and return on investment. So this is really critical. And as I mentioned, it's not something that you can do and then stop doing because you think that you have found the best possible EVP. It's a circle. So after 1 or 2 years, review it, go back to the surveys, measure if it's still impactful enough. I mean, we live in a world that evolves and goes quite fast. So obviously things are changing, and you should be too.
Talking about measuring, it's funny how you see that recruiters are often asked, by senior management or even just management for KPIs, yes. Just so they can get a view of how successful their recruitment is. But what you don't see often is KPIs that goes beyond the exercises done by the recruitment department. And I guess this is something, a message that we're trying to to bring across as good as possible, is that the EVP, the KPIs around EVPs goes really beyond just the KPIs,
of course,
around recruitment itself, the activities done by the recruiters.
Yeah. No, indeed. How long is the employee staying? What is your retention rate? All those kind of things is something that
the
is
websites,
extremely,
like the visit on the website.
Of course. Recruitment, and the way we see it is recruitment should be treated like marketing. We invest so much time in finding amazing customers and everything. But as Richard Branson always say, if you treat well your employees, they will treat well your customers, and then you will bring more customers.
There you go.
And that's a simple strategy. But he has adopted that throughout the past 30 years, and it has been extremely successful for him. So that's really something that is cool. Here, just a couple seconds on a worksheet that we have prepared. So you can really see all the steps: analyze, design, communicate, integrate, measure. With all the questions that you would like to ask, and then take new notes. And then from there on, you will be able to start building your EVP worksheets.
Yeah.
So some of the things that we have talked about, the kind of employer branding initiatives that you can do, it's really critical. But as we mentioned, everyone knows about career page, and everyone knows about social media, everyone knows about application process. But obviously, what often happens is that people tend to jump into this before actually going into digging deeper in your EVP. And what we see, and this is why Nike and why NBC has been so successful, is they took the exercise around. They first focused on the EVP, who they were, what they were doing, what employees were benefiting, what they had to offer, and then they put that and laid out on their career page. And you have to see, I will show a couple of examples, but they both look amazing. I mean, Nike has an entire website, for the recruitment part and the candidate engagement. Same thing with NBC. This is really something that companies should start investing in, and they are dragging and attracting hundreds, thousands, millions of candidates thanks to this. So obviously, building great career page and great career site goes on with the EVP. The social media communication can be shared if you have the right EVP and you can transmit this message. Having a great application process. I don't know if you have ever been on your recruitment website, but way too often what we see is companies having good career site, and then you click, you allow candidates to apply, and then the first thing they see, login password. I mean, isn't it the biggest barrier that you're placing between you and your candidates? I mean, why should they create a login and a password? I mean, we are in a world where this is not needed anymore. And this is the type of things that not feel too important, but the drop-off rate and the churn that you have just because of this is enormous. So you can invest, let's say, 2,000 euros on job boards, and then you have this big barrier. Candidates are dropping out, and you have maybe 30 candidates when you could have 100.
Or even 30,000 euros for that matter.
Of course, because you haven't found this candidate that might actually came.
Career websites.
Of course.
Let's see how you have a password being requested.
Of course, and
so
this is a small
what
example.
You're saying that those initiatives need to actually reflect your EVP, because if you don't find your EVP here, for instance, in your career website, your EVP is not just the benefits, salary benefits, or first and secondary benefits.
Yeah.
Very often I've had a prospect or even clients in the past who thought that EVP was just what do I have to offer within the job, but actually it goes way beyond that. So your career website really needs to reflect your company, your employer value proposition.
And how often do we have customers and prospects that we talk about, and when they have to explain what your USP is, unique selling point. Everyone goes on and knows exactly, but when we ask about EVP, it's not maybe as clear. And this is really something that should be reflected on. Francis, by the way, we talk a bit too much. That's usual for us, so we don't have much time. So now we will be jumping onto you will be able to see the slides. As I mentioned, NBC, as I mentioned, Nike, those are extremely good brands that you should look at. They do amazing things. So when is employer branding needed? Couple of seconds, Francis.
Couple of seconds. So very quickly. So basically, to cut it short, to cut down to the chase, like you need your employer branding not after you've already designed your business plan, your business model. You actually need to start thinking about it while you're designing your business model. Okay, and start doing the work from there on. So not after you've already started with everything else, and then only then start thinking about your employer branding. Yeah.
Okay, that was indeed concise.
Yes. Next slide. Who should be involved? Well, I think you've said most of it. So next slide. Most of it you've already said, but this is a joint effort, spread out throughout different departments. And to give some example, if you go to the next slide,
yes.
You'll see that people that are involved are part of human resources, the learning and development, IT, operations and finance, corporate communication, marketing. Why? Because all these people need to reflect, need to understand, but also really live your value, your company's value proposition.
Indeed.
Next slide is this you can skip this. Conclusion, perhaps to give you a conclusion. So you need to treat your employees just as very, very, very well, because your employees are your greatest asset. And always treat your employee exactly as you want them to treat your best customers.
Great. So obviously, this is it for us. Maybe we have a couple of minutes before everyone has to go to answer some questions.
Yeah.
That would be great. Your phone is already ringing,
yeah.
and our business is bringing you back to business. So what? So and now, where can we see the question list?
One hand raised. Yeah. If you click on it. Okay. So if you go to chat, yeah, they're on the left.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Nice. Okay. Let's see.
So
Q&A. If you go to Q&A, top left. Yeah. Emphasizing on your employer. In your opinion, would you say that emphasizing on employer branding allows you to find better candidates?
So again,
the question perhaps.
Maybe I can share it, and then you can answer. Would you say that that emphasizing on your employer branding allowed you to find better candidates?
I think I should ask you the question, being the head of our organization.
Yeah, I think again, I mean, we at Skilled, we scaled, and you know that quite a lot. I mean, in the recent years. So I mean, we were more than 30 people now. It's been close to 4 years. That's quite a big growth. But obviously, this is really something that is so important for us. Is we have invested in employer branding. We know exactly our VP. This is something that last year, end of the year, we focused on having making sure that everyone is fully aligned, and this is this has helped us to attract quite amazing people and get visibility out there. So great talent are actually attracted to come to work for Skill, not only because we have a very strong vision, a long-term vision, but for this organization, but the way we are perceived, and the organization that and what we're providing as employee branding is very strong. And this is only the beginning. I mean, there's still so much room for improvements.
Okay, very good. I see there are more questions, but perhaps what we could do, obviously we'll share with you our contact details, and feel free to reach out, and then we can always connect and see how we can answer your questions. But to do perhaps a last question.
Fair enough. So we can do one last question before everyone has to go. So how would you recommend overcoming historic negative opinions as an employer?
Very good question.
Well, it's actually a very good one. I think you have seen plenty of organizations that had extremely bad reputations, and for many reasons, and that have managed to overcome those problems. Obviously, negative historic doesn't always stick. It's something that people will always be able to find, but eventually, if you work. You walk the talk, and you actually go through the process of improving this opinion, and get a positive attitude, get a positive impact on the world. But technically, you can overcome this without any problem. And this is actually a good case for people to be joining you, because they want to actually help you doing so. And you see organization really switching from one type of product they're using to something else, because they want to make the world a better place,
Yeah.
And there's many cases like
but
this.
I think it's not just like a matter of negative, negative opinions. I think as an employer, you should see this as opportunity to improve, and not as something negative. In my opinion, in my experience, that's most employers who've seen such things, such feedback, as opportunities, we're only able to grow. So with that, I guess we'd like to conclude, and thank you for your time and for joining us. And again, we'll share with you the content of the webinar. Feel free to reach out with any questions. We'll be more than happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Francis.
All right.
That was great.
Cheers.